Buddy,
How you doing?
good man. Here with my great friend Ale Jerez. Um, really glad to see you on the pod today. It was a long time coming, and I'm glad that we're able to make some time to sit down. I know it's both of our schedules have been kind
Yeah.
of hectic, and it's
Yeah.
all of August is going to continue to be like that. But
Right.
I'm really glad that you took the time. You're a busy guy, and I think we need to showcase you.
Yeah. No, thanks for
So
having me. I mean, it's my first time doing one of these. I missed the last one with the group, so excited, especially because it's something that I'm really passionate about, and it goes beyond just the watches that we'll talk about today. But
yeah,
appreciate the time today.
yeah, and the podcast is Watches and Wisdom, so it's not just about the
Hmm.
watches. The watches is just a point of reference, really, and then it becomes an afterthought. But it's really just to showcase what the relationship is between the watches and how it impacts your life and
Hmm.
how your life impacts others. And so, you know, we could have collectors coming in all the time, but if I see that they're just not interesting people, or they're not really helping other people,
Hmm.
or their lives are not impactful in a real meaningful way, then it's pointless to have them on here because it's not going to bless anybody or help anybody. So
Right.
I thought how much work you're doing, obviously behind the scenes, and stuff that you do with you know some of the charities that you deal
Right.
with, and we'll get into that later. But um, because it's called Watches and Wisdom, what's on the wrist today?
So what I brought today is my Vacheron 222, and this one I just got earlier this year, and it means a lot to me just because when you think about watches, I think most people think about commemorating some special occasion,
Mm-hmm.
some milestone in their lives, and this is one that I got beginning of the year because I had just left my firm and former partnership, and it was a lot of work in the final quarter before I left, getting everything ready, making sure all my clients came with me, right? So I remember right before Christmas Eve, making sure all my ducks were in order. So once everything happened in January, that I brought all my clients over, everything was up and running. This was kind of my present to myself, and I love Vacheron. I'm a big fan also of Patek, Audemars Piguet, but of course they're a little bit more playing the game sometimes as far
Mm-hmm.
as
Sure.
we may or may not get you something when you want it. But I had already asked for this watch, and our boutique here is awesome, great group. I love working with Natalie and Javier. So I called Natalie and said, hey, listen, I just left my former business, started my new one, completely from scratch with my new partner. I really want to commemorate that. And I know I've asked about the 222, but is there any possibility that you can help me out with this just to commemorate this month?
Sure.
And she made it happen, right? I mean, it wasn't easy. Thankfully, someone backed out of their allocation, or they had to think about it for 30 days. So, it came to me. So I was able to get something in hand to commemorate that. And I'm a big fan of Vacheron in itself. I think it might be probably my favorite brand. Just beyond the technicalities, they're obviously part of the Trinity, but I think it's just they've been the most consistent.
Yeah.
You think about Patek and Audemars Piguet again. I think not only were they part of the hype, but also maybe fed into the hype with some
Yeah.
of their collaborations, the Tiffany colored Nautilus and all that. That created a lot of
Yeah.
the craziness, which really wasn't attainable.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Vacheron, I think, has been not just the longest watchmaker in continuous existence
Right.
since 1755, but
Mm-hmm.
also just consistent with their brand. They don't really do anything too crazy. They have some crazy complications, but then they've got their sports models, which are beautiful, like the Overseas, the 222s, and they've got their beautiful dress pieces. I see you've got one on here.
Yeah.
I
I
was looking at it
mean,
earlier.
let me take a look. I love the 222. I just love the understated elegance of the 222, whereas you see some of the other gold pieces
Hmm.
and they're in your face. They're shiny, they're polished, they're this is not in your face.
Right.
This is a 1970s
Hmm.
style, gold watch, but without any of the flash.
Right.
It's thin. Integrated bracelet is fantastic. I mean, you really can't do any better. It's
Yeah, the
tapered.
finishing is amazing on
The
that.
finishing is great. I mean, the way that the bracelet flexes in itself, the clasp, the muted dial, like everything about this watch screams understated
Right.
luxury. You're not showing anybody that you know, are rich or wealthy or successful, but watch guys, when they see you wearing a Vacheron,
Mm-hmm.
they know
Right.
that you know watches. And so, yeah, I love this watch. Yeah, like you said, like I'm a big Vacheron fan.
Yeah.
I love Vacheron. I think, you know, when you talk about the hype, right? Like, you know, and not to bash any, you know, watch makers or, you know, houses. I just think the way that they do elegance and
Mm-hmm.
luxury, and it's so understated. You know, the patrimony, you know, is really just small seconds.
Right.
You know, it's, you know, time only, and then, you know, you got the small seconds in the bottom. It's perfect. I mean, when you look at, you know, some of the Calatravas, you know, maybe some of the codes or the, you know, Jules, Audemars models, they kind of, you know, kind of harken back to that.
Right.
But I think Vacheron and Patek Philippe do it the best.
Mm-hmm.
Langa does, you know, some really incredible, you know, time only with the
Right.
small second stuff. Like I really like it. Um, but just Vacheron as a company, I'm with you. I know it's definitely my top three. I said there is a few watchmakers that I want to continue with, and I don't want to play that game where I've got, you know, something of every
Right.
watchmaker. Or no, I want to be loyal and true to the watchmakers that I like, the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that speaks to me, the stuff that, you know, I think identifies kind of with where I am as a collector. I'm not a huge collector. You know, I'm really just, you know, just an enthusiast,
Right.
really. But I really said I'm going to stick to three brands that I really love, you know, maybe four brands. And I'm just going to kind of, you know, be loyal to these guys. And yes, I'll buy some of the smaller independents, and we'll talk
Right.
about some
Yep.
independents now. But I thought there's no other brand really that speaks to me in terms of their entire line like Vacheron
Right.
does. And we love, you know, we love FP Journe, you know, we love Patek Philippe, but not every line really speaks to me. And
Right.
with Vacheron, I mean, you can start and you have a favorite in every single collection that they make, really. And you know, the stuff that they make for women even,
Right.
it's just fantastic. It's great. The uses of the dials, the most complicated watch in the entire world ever produced was a Vacheron, you know, production. So, you know, they're really, they don't like to strut their stuff
Right.
too much, but they let you know that they deserve to be, first
Yeah.
of all, high horology, and they deserve to be mentioned in the Holy Trinity conversation. And I think now more than ever, seeing how much watchmakers are struggling, the bigger ones. Now, what Vacheron is doing is I think they're doubling down on the stuff that they do well.
Right.
And I mean, we've had conversations with, you know, Javi from the Miami boutique, and Natalie and some of the other guys there. And, you know, the stuff that they're telling us is exciting, because when companies, I think, are kind of, you know, having to reduce, I think they're expanding, and they're
Right.
expanding all over the U.S. There's new boutiques everywhere, and so like the one that they're doing in Miami in the design district, you know, it's 3 floors with
Yeah.
a cigar lounge. You know,
Yep.
I mean,
It's
I think
exciting.
they got us
Yeah.
there. You know, but yeah, I really love what they're doing. I just, you know, big shout out to Vacheron. I mean, you guys are doing great. And Lauren Perez, amazing job. Very young, head of a company. You know,
Right.
39 or 40 years old.
Yeah.
I love what he's doing, and I think that he's taking the
Yeah.
brand in the right direction. And you know, you're seeing, and we won't mention brands, but heads of different brands actually stepping down.
Right.
And I think, you know,
Yeah.
Vacheron, and they're stepping up.
Yeah. And you made
So
a excellent point before. I think the keyword you use is understated. They're killing
Yeah.
it. They're growing while still remaining, not a hype piece, very understated,
Right.
very elegant, whether it's sporty or not. I
Yeah.
mean, this watch, I feel like I've only seen, Brad Pitt and maybe recently one comedian wearing it.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to me, but I also like that. I don't want it
Yeah,
to
of
be
course.
that everybody recognizes this watch. So,
Yeah. So speaking of watches that you don't see people wearing, this is a world time. So this is also Vacheron world time, rose gold. But this piece, when I wear this, and people don't even know what this is.
Right.
And obviously the gold is a little shiny. But if this was a white gold piece, nobody would even
Right.
ask. It's a beautiful piece, amazing, amazing technical piece. It's just everything's on the crown. There's no other buttons to push. There's no pushers. There's nothing. It's everything is moved on the crown, and it's a world timer. I think this one's got 37 different cities and
Wow.
some time zones. So I really enjoy wearing this one. I wasn't gonna bring it in today.
Mhm.
I actually had left it in the car because I was gonna showcase another independent, but I just thought, yeah, let me wear this, and especially that you're wearing a Vacheron, I thought, well,
Yeah.
let's match today.
That's beautiful. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, that's rose gold, so I feel like it's not as flashy.
Right.
I've never been a yellow gold guy. That's why I actually like this because it's a little bit more satin, almost like sandblasted.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have that kind of sheen to it, and that's what really drew me to this. But I'm a big sucker for rose gold.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I fell in love. And to your point too about you could buy so many different models from Vacheron. I look at that. I look at some of the historiques.
Yeah.
Overseas. All kinds of the traditionels, patrimony. Everything is great. If money, wasn't an issue, I would
Which
have
it
every
is.
single model. Yeah, I would have every single model, and yeah, they're just all beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that that it kind of goes to what we were saying is like, hey, you can't have every single watch. I mean, unless you're ultra wealthy, then you can buy whatever you want. But to us, we're business owners, and we've got other places that we need to allocate our money to. Can't just buy watches all day,
Right.
even though we do. But I think when you look at a brand, and I don't want to, kind of, this is not an ad for Vacheron, by the way, but when you look at, a brand and, you love them enough that you would buy, kind of one piece in every single collection, I think you should be loyal and you should stick to that. And it's good to buy secondary, of course, because, you can save some money, but at the same time, buy from your AD. Buy from your AD. Get to know your SA or your salesperson, and really kind of understand where you're going, where you are now as a collector, an enthusiast, or maybe you're just a spectator for now.
Right.
And then have that goal, set that goal up, become friends with the ADs, and they're gonna help you along your journey, and they're gonna move you towards that end goal or that grail, which that always changes,
Yeah.
The grail, I read
Right.
something the other day, every grail has become a stepping stone,
Right.
But definitely, talk to your ADs, really get close to them, try to, have them guide you. And if they give you advice where they say, well, don't buy this watch, wait until you're ready, you've got a good AD.
Right.
You've got a good AD.
Yeah.
So we're going to jump into watches now. All right? And I want you to just start me off. This is Watches and Wisdom.
Mhm.
So, the watches have to mean something to you.
Right.
I know you've got a pretty vast collection of watches. So when, we decided, I said, bring the stuff that really matters. I've seen a lot of your stuff. And yes, you've got some incredible pieces, but I really wanted the stuff that was going to speak to you. So talk to me about what you have.
Yeah. So when we first talked about this, I was thinking, what are my most unique watches? But like you said, they may be pretty sentimental in some cases because it was a milestone. But really, this goes beyond watches with what I brought today. And, when you really think about sentimental, emotional value, the first one I brought here was this IWC.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, I love this watch because it's got that kind of vintage bracelet. It's one where I've traveled with it. It's very under the radar.
That's a great travel watch.
Yeah,
man.
beautiful blue. It's got the,
the dial's
the
amazing.
easy, you can just expand all the links here,
Yeah.
like 5 clicks.
Micro adjustments.
Yep.
And
So really easy.
good clasp too.
Very good clasp. Very sturdy. So I've loved traveling with this. And again, going back to the blues, Vacheron has their beautiful blue with the overseas, but I think this one is...
This is no slouch, man.
It's not. No.
Yeah, this is really great.
I love blues, so you'll see I'm wearing a blue shirt, blue whoop, everything's blue. That one just spoke to me. But the real...
this is great, man.
So I had my eye on that one for a while. And
what year did you buy this?
This was 2021. So if you look in the back, it's actually a special edition of The Little Prince.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Let's look at that.
So I had been eyeing it, and that's one that was on my list to look at some point. I thought it might have gotten discontinued even. But the reason I bought it was to commemorate when my grandma passed. Oh. So it was, 2021. Of course, 2020 with the lockdowns. Chile was very strict. I was born in Chile, grew up there. All my family is still there except for my parents, my brother, and one of my cousins. But they were in a strict lockdown where you couldn't visit for about a year until everybody was vaccinated. If you did go, you had to quarantine for 2 weeks, and it couldn't be with your family. Otherwise, they had to quarantine for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So things were opening up. Vaccines were out. They were letting you travel into the country. So my mom and brother went early November of 2021. And about a week and a half in, my grandmother had a stroke. Wow. And I had already been thinking about when I went, because I was going mid-December for Christmas, New Year's, to see everybody. It had been a year and a half, almost 2 years since I went. Yeah. And, I've always been a watch guy since I was a kid. She was part of my first watch when I was 8 years old.
Oh, wow. What was that?
So funny enough, the way I got started in watches was through cars. And I used to get the DuPont Registry magazine.
Oh my God, I remember that.
And I remember I opened the, kind of the front cover, and inside there's a huge bluesy Submariner.
Yeah. And
I was like, I love this. I love the blue. So I told my parents, I want this for Christmas, not knowing like any concept of money. Yeah. So I'm sure they're like, okay, sure,
Yeah.
And that Christmas when I was 8 years old, my grandma helped them select it, but it was pretty much like not even a real watch. It wasn't even like anything like these plastic swatches or anything like that. It was like an actual plastic see-through blue watch that dispensed gum.
Oh, wow.
So my mom said my grandma helped them choose it. So,
cool.
I was like, it's not the bluesy, but it's cool, right? So I had that.
Well, you forgot about the bluesy as soon as you got that one, I'm sure.
It was still fun. And I think that year also I had like a Nintendo 64. So it was just like a fun Christmas, as a kid. Yeah. But I had gotten my grandma some watches, and she was in her 90s, so it was getting harder for her to see. And I would see she had these like tiny old watches like this size, like probably like 18 millimeters. Mm-hmm. So I told myself when I go this Christmas, I'm going to bring her like a pilot's watch. So I was thinking like a Timex or a Hamilton with the big numbers.
Yeah.
And, before I even bought it, she had a stroke, it lasted 24 hours and passed away.
Oh, man.
So the day that happened, I went to my AD at Mayer's, and I asked him, hey, is this watch still available? I think it got discontinued. They didn't have it in a store, but they overnighted it for me since, I wanted to get that to really commemorate my grandmother's passing. So this is one of those watches where, I say I'll never sell my watches, but you always think if there's some kind of emergency, you need to, raise money. At the end of the day, family or health is more important. This is one of those that I could never partner with just because of what it means to me. So, you can see most of my watches are pretty, clean, well kept. This one has taken more of a beating because I know it's one of those that I'm always going to have. So I've traveled with it. I've done everything with this watch. So this means a lot to me.
And you want to watch, especially if it represents your grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
She lasted to, such a great age. Because, after 90, I mean, after 70, you're lucky to get another 10 years,
Right.
But that's a watch that you wear and you think about your grandmother every time you put it on.
Right.
It's a good memory. That's, kind of what watches should be. It shouldn't just be a trinket. Where you buy something, you get a dopamine spike for, what is it, 48 hours that we get, and then we're looking for, another watch.
Maybe a week if you're lucky on the honeymoon period.
Maybe a week, if it's a really special watch. So it should mean something.
Yeah, and I mean, and then the Little Prince, it was perfect because I used to spend pretty much every summer and winter growing up. I moved here when I was really young, and I would still go back a lot just because my dad was part of an airline. So we were always in Chile, had, pretty much the ability to travel whenever.
Right.
He eventually switched jobs when I was 10. So we started going pretty much just for the whole summer, and I would spend it with her. It was winter time over there, so, sometimes she would just be reading the newspaper. I would be reading, books at the time. And I remember this one really spoke to me, The Little Prince. I read it in Spanish, El Principito. So I always thought about those winters with her, where we just kind of sat around and, read and hung out. So this was just kind of the combination watch in all the sense, So
I love it.
This is one that I love for that reason.
Amazing, man.
Yeah.
That's it's a great memory, man. That's what this is all about, And we've met so many incredible people. Shout out to MIA Watch Club. The
Yeah.
best watch club in Miami for sure. The U.S. I'm sure as well, and maybe the world very soon. But through the watch club, we've met so many incredible people. I met
Hmm.
you through the
Yeah.
watch club, and we've met friends that
Right.
we're a lot closer
Yep.
now, just basically with the through the watch club. So yeah, man, it's something that they have to mean something.
Right.
I mean, you can buy cars, you can buy, you know, just fill in the blank, anything you want, but ultimately that's what it is. It's a dopamine spike
Right.
for 48 hours, a
Hmm.
month, maybe a week, whatever it is. If it's a car, maybe it lasts a little bit longer, but
Right.
the feeling always fades.
Hmm.
What doesn't fade is the memories.
Right.
And so, yeah, let's keep going. What else do
All
you
right. So next one, you know, I know Rolex has a lot of love hate. Some of it justified, but I started with Rolex. Just I mentioned the first watch I fell in love with was a
Mhm.
bluesy. I never got a bluesy just because I don't love yellow gold like I mentioned before. But this was one that, funny enough, was the hardest one for me to obtain.
Mm.
I started with. I really loved the Batman. I was able to get that, at one point, but the Pepsi was the most elusive one for me.
got? Yeah.
And so at one
It's a
point,
very popular watch.
yeah, and I've been blessed where I was able to get a Daytona before this. So this was
Wow.
actually about a 4-year wait when you consider everything. And in the meantime, I even had a Tudor Pepsi, so that was my go-to. I probably traveled with that one for 2 years straight. That was probably my most beat up watch right before this one.
Yeah.
So, and that one was probably my second big boy watch back in like 2017 or so. So the Pepsi always meant something to me. I think it's very iconic. The sub is one thing, the Daytona is another, but I think these colors, are just beautiful. So this is another one of those that signifies this crazy watch journey. Not only the time it took, but also what I picked up along the way, almost, to be like a proxy for it. So this one means a lot to me just because I love the colors. I love what it meant in my journey with watches.
Yeah.
And also because of the other watch I have there, which is something I got for my brother.
Oh.
So it's
yeah, let's talk about that.
yeah. So that one, funny enough, also a Pepsi, but it's a Timex Pepsi
Okay.
and with a Snoopy on it.
Great watches, Timex.
Yeah. So I got this one for my brother during COVID, and my brother. So he's.
I want to talk about your brother because
Yeah.
I love your brother.
Yeah.
Man. I like him even more than I like you.
Yeah, I get that all the time.
I'm kidding.
so-
I'm kidding.
So
But he is great. So I want to hear
Yeah.
all about your brother.
yeah, so my brother, he's special needs.
Yeah.
There were some complications at birth, and then maybe something else along the way. But basically, he has some degrees of autism.
Mhm.
Some of the repetitive behaviors, the flailing, also intellectual disability.
Right.
So he's been pretty much along with my parents and my grandma, my North Star my whole life. And I realized he was different when I was probably 4 years old. I remember we had a birthday party in McDonald's,
Mhm.
and he was with his classmates, some of the other kids that were there. Obviously being mean. And I didn't understand it at the time because it's what I was used to since I can remember. But it was that point when I was probably 4 or 5 years old that I realized he was different.
Yeah.
So that was always, I think, why I matured pretty early. I knew where I could take things or how to take things seriously, and others where I could joke around. So me, I love to joke around about most things, but
Yeah.
I do have my North Star always
Yeah.
in things that matter. And he's one where he's heard me, my friends, my family throughout the years talk about things we love, right? Like Rolex,
Mhm.
Porsche.
Sure.
So when he thinks about cars, he doesn't say, can we go in the car? He says, can we go in the Porsche?
Yeah.
Or if we talk about watches, he's like, I like your
You don't
Rolex.
even own a Porsche.
I don't. That's one of the goals, but he's heard that so much. And then just like watches, when he sees a watch, he's like, I love your Rolex.
Yeah.
So this was one I got for him. I had gotten watches before, but this one was cool because I had just missed when this came out. It was a
Okay.
Snoopy Pepsi with Timex,
That's amazing.
and I was able to source it in Japan. So it was during lockdowns. I think it took like 6 months to finally be shipped and delivered. But I got this one for him, and now he loves this. So he loves it because it has Snoopy on it. We like Peanuts,
Yeah.
Charlie Brown, and then he likes the Pepsi because I have the Pepsi, so he associates that with it.
Yeah.
And you'll see him out at events, and he'll say, "Do you like my Rolex?" So he always shows this. So it's like his version of what he sees
I
with
see that.
with me.
That's
So,
great.
and he's been with me a lot of the times that I've gotten watches. So he's been part of that. I'll go to Mayors with him, pick up a watch. They know
Oh,
I'm there.
that's
So
great.
so I've made sure he's part of that. So
Is that
he
why you didn't
enjoys it.
invite me to go get your scooter?
I already got my +1.
Man, this is such a great watch. So
Yeah.
fun.
And it's perfect for him. I mean, it's like a 37 millimeters, I think,
Oh,
37 and a
it's
half.
great, dude.
The bracelet, has
Fits
that
me
cool.
too.
Yeah,
37 is
yeah.
good for me.
Yeah, it's a great look. It looks more like the vintage distressed
Oh, and
Pepsi.
it's
So
got and it's got it's quartz,
yeah.
and it's got that 70-year stamp on the
Mm-hmm.
case back there.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
great. And
So
this is great that it's a quartz watch
yeah.
too, because this watch will never die. You just
Right.
replace the battery and
Yeah,
keep going.
and it's an easy replacement. It's not like the ones where you have
Right.
to pop open the bag,
Yeah,
get
yeah.
it
This
water
is
tested.
just
That one just
pull
pop
it
it
right
out
open.
and
You
you're
don't
good.
even have to turn the case back. It's
Yeah.
great. This is man. This is fantastic. Yeah, man. And just speaking on your brother, I hadn't met him, and then we're gonna get into some of the charity stuff that you do with him and with his school and whatnot. But we had this most recently this charity event that you put together, which I
Yeah.
was so happy to be a part of, and I got to see your brother and how fun and how cool he is, but also some of the challenges that we face as human beings, and what people with special needs, the
Mm.
challenges that they face. A lot of times that they just have to be under constant supervision, and
Yeah.
we take so many things for granted. Like the freedoms that we have,
Right.
and kind of the liberties that we take, and that we can get up and go anywhere we want, or jump in the car and drive somewhere, or meet friends, or swim in the ocean, or get on a boat, anything. And when we see people that have special needs or some type of disability, or even people that are less fortunate than us, we have to be so grateful that we have everything that we have, and that God has given us so many wonderful blessings to to appreciate life. I see people with special needs, and going back to your brother, I don't see frowns. They're not worried about tomorrow. Your brother was laughing the entire
Mm.
time, smiling the entire time, asking all the girls to the dance floor.
Yeah. Yep.
All the women were kind of on notice, because every time he would walk around, he'd, just kind of pull one. He didn't care whether they were married or not,
Yeah.
So that was him. But, every picture, he's got a smile on his face. Every time I've seen him in any pictures, he's smiling. And so, he's got a significant amount of challenges, but, at the same time, that doesn't affect like the joyfulness and how
Right.
happy he is. You look at that and you're like, man, what do I have to complain about? Like, why am I worried about certain things? I'm healthy. My family's healthy. Your immediate family, mother, father, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you have all of that stuff, you've got a lot to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And so, I think like seeing your brother was, for me, was like a breath of fresh air, because it renewed kind of that idea of gratitude, and not allowing people to kind of complain around me, because I usually, I think I'm a grateful person, but I think you can get people around you that complain or are negative, and you really have to guard yourself against that, because they could bring you down, they could affect you. It's kind of like a cancer.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's your brother was huge, and we talked yesterday or the day before, and I'm like, I want to hang out with
Yeah.
your brother, man. So, but yeah, I mean, talk about a little bit of the work that you do with his school,
Yeah.
particularly, and what charities you're
Yeah. Yeah. So I've always been involved. I've always had that calling. So in college, I was in Big Brother Big Sister, for example. I
Yeah,
did a couple other
great.
things. Ronald McDonald House. But when
Sure.
I went away to college, worked in the Northeast for a couple of years, and I came back just over 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And when I moved back, I knew wanted to be involved in two things. One was the Chilean community, just because I want to give back to them. It's not a huge community in Miami, but want to do something there. So I joined the
Sure.
Chile U.S. Chamber of Commerce. But the other thing was always, special needs has been on my mind, right?
Yeah.
Because when you looked at it 10 years ago and even today, they always talk about how, we're making some breakthroughs now, but, very little funding for it, very little research. And I always thought I want to be involved in some way where it's more hands-on.
Yeah.
So I thought, what better way than the learning center he started attending. And he started
Okay.
going there when I was gone. Um, So in Florida, we have a special needs programs through the state until ages 21, in some cases 22. After that, I mean, you're on your own, right?
Right.
There's private places. There's some that are, semi-state funded.
Yeah.
And my brother was able to get into the WOW Center after about a year wait list. So while I was gone, I noticed some of the breakthroughs he was having. Just, it's a really great place. So again, going back to that of where can you have an impact where it's hands-on, I thought, you've got an adult day learning center where they've got all kinds of programs, right? Those that are ready, they've got supported employment, workforce programs. Those that are not ready for that or maybe a little bit more dependent,
Yeah.
they do, music therapy, occupational therapy. You've got sports, a little bit of everything. So it's almost like your school. And it's a bridge there, right? You go there from 9 to 3. There's some other after school or weekend programs. But I just saw some of the advancements he had. And I knew how to get involved in some way. I didn't think so much about becoming like a board member just because, you almost feel like it's imposter syndrome. I moved back when I was 24 years old. So last thing I thought of was let me, get on the board there. And, especially for something a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
It's a whole center, right? And with a full board structure. So what I started doing when I moved back along with my cousin was we started doing a casino night where it was just friends and family. We would invite 30, 40 people. You bought your chips. Everything went to the WOW Center at the end of the day. We also did a basketball fundraiser. So we would invite all our friends that, love playing basketball or were part of a basketball community. They could invite their friends. We would do like a 4-on-4, 5-on-5.
Yeah.
So we would just play. You would donate, $50, be part of a team, and then you got some additional donations. So it was a lot more of that kind of grassroots movement for me the first few years. And then right during COVID, they invited me part of the board. So I started off just as a regular board member, and I think 2 years in, they nominated me to be secretary. So, shut up, help with the legal aspects, the meeting minutes. And then, a year ago, they actually nominated me as vice chair for 1 year and then chair-elect starting July 1st of this year. So
Amazing.
It's been exactly
Congrats,
a month now.
man.
Thank you. Yeah, not something I expected to be so quick, nor was it what I was looking for, but I was just honored and really blessed that they trusted me to do that. I think it's not something I take lightly. So I just wanted to make sure I was ready. So, when they offered me that a year ago, they said, would you be interested in this? And I hadn't thought about it. So, of course, I talked to my family. I prayed on it, and I think, I'm ready. Like I mentioned, I made some changes where I gave up some parts of some of my businesses I had, went a little bit more independent, so I had more control of everything. Yeah. And I felt like knowing that was already in motion, when it came July 1st this year, I was going to be up and running. And of course, it's still drinking from a fire hose because you're still learning, how some of the things with Medicaid work, with operations, with the state. But at the end of the day, I think if your heart is in the right place, you're going to do the best job, So I'm happy that they let me, serve in any way I can and help them. So the casino night you attended, that's one of the things I've done, and I've really scaled it. So we made it a little bit more corporate, invited sponsors, and I'm happy to say we raised over $35,000 this year.
How much compared to last year did you guys increase that?
Last year was $17,000. And if you looked at it pre-COVID, where it was still friends and family, we were doing $3,000, $3,500.
More than double, man. That's great.
So it's tenfold now when you look at it from 7 years ago, and then double from last year.
Yeah.
And and it just goes to show, again, shout out to the Miami Watch Club. We put that out there in the community. Some of the group there, they couldn't make it. They still sponsored. They sent money in.
Amazing.
So just it's a great brotherhood and community, and I get emotional thinking about that. We just met, a couple months ago, but some of the bonds we have are, better than some of the friends I've known for like decades, right? So it's just the affinity we have, and just like you said, it's more than just the watches. It's just everything we talk about, whether it's life, everything we're going through, business. It's just been a great community for us.
Yeah, and we, I mean, we got together last night. We were, we had a little meetup, and we talked about how, we've only really known each other for a very short time, a lot of the guys in the group. And, you grow up with some of your friends and, some of the people that, maybe are in your community, whatnot. And you become fast friends with your watch club brothers. And I don't know why it is, I guess because we all are really into watches. We're either enthusiasts or collectors and, observers. But it's amazing how quickly, this bond grows when you're part of, I would suppose it's any watch club, but I think more so ours than anything else. Because, we've seen some other watch club and, it's no knock on them. It's just, we always gather together. We have meetups. We have cigar nights, and it's just, it kind of is something, laid back,
Right.
and it's informal, and somebody will put up, hey, we're meeting at so and so place at 4 p.m. and you get 30 people there, which is unheard of. It's 24-hour notice, sometimes not even. And you get that many people out there. It's nice because, with guys, and we'll, in speaking, about the special needs community and stuff that you've done, I'm gonna flip to the other side of it, which is mental health,
Right.
and how difficult it is for men to kind of share together. We need something,
Right.
so whether it's watches or it's a cigar or it's whatever, the cars, we need something in order to kind of open up. And I think what the reason that the MIA Watch Club has been so successful is because, really unbeknownst to many of the guys that are participating, when we get together in a meetup or a car meetup or a cigar meetup or whatever, we're having these conversations and kind of talking about certain struggles that we've got, and some of the situations that we feel like we could be better in, or maybe some problems with marriages or some problems with kids or whatever it is. But as men, we're kind of opening up and letting other people know like how they can help, really, because you never know, the other person on the other side is listening to this and has gone through a situation that you have. And so it makes it where really we don't know that we're helping people.
Right.
And just being a part of the Watch Club and going to these meetups and kind of talking to some of the guys that you might not know, we're really helping them as much as we're helping ourselves mentally, with our mental health, spiritually, and physically. And you get motivated seeing some of the other like men in the club that are healthier. That's motivated me to be more healthy. And so like stuff like that, where it's an unintended consequence, but a good one. So, but we'll get off some of the sappy stuff. Let's go back to watches right now, right?
Perfect.
What do you feel? How do you feel about independence? What's your thought process? Do you own any independents? Obviously, we're not showcasing them here, but I want to know what your thoughts are on independence.
Yeah, I love independence. I like what they're doing. I mean, we've talked about this in the past. Like, how do you define independent? Is it if they're completely independently owned, or is it just because they're doing only in-house movements their own way? So I think there's a lot of
that's a good distinction.
It's broad out there, but I do like to support them just because they're doing things that aren't just the same mold as always, right? They're not just copying or creating an homage of something. So if they're doing creative things, I like to support that. I've got a few independents, of course. My love for Journe, and I just think it's such a unique watch. Not just
do you own any Journes?
I'm still waiting. I've been for a couple of years, but of course it's not easy.
You know who you are. Help us out.
So it's been a couple of years, but it's a long game. So but I still can appreciate from afar or now close up in our group where a lot of our guys have some other Journes, and it just confirmed how much I love those. I mean, you think about. Like the Loon, for example, that one with the offset, almost like grandfather clock. It's got a moon phase. I love that. I think it's not a real, useful complication. It's just romantic.
Yeah.
And then it's got some other cool features to it. And then you look at, their finishing, the movements, just great quality all around. So, that's probably my favorite independent. And then I've got some that are more, smaller scale, but I've collected a few this year as well. So pretty interesting ideas coming out with, the jump hours.
What have you collected this year in terms of independence? What has really stood out to you? Obviously, Journe is, it's an anomaly. I mean, he's an independent, but he's the greatest living watchmaker. So, yes, I get it. But some of the smaller stuff, what have you gotten into this year?
I mean, so recently, I know a lot of us in the club got them the Chrono Tokyo with an ice blue dial.
I just got mine,
That's a beautiful one. You look at it, some of the finishing. I mean, we think about like Grand Seiko finishing. This one is a little bit more of true independent.
It doesn't have the finishing of Grand Seiko, but they do a really good job, and they're very unique. What else?
You think about Studio Underdog, right?
That's fun.
The avocado. I love that. Like, what a cool watch.
Fun.
And we've seen some of our friends put on like the orange straps, change.
Did you get yours?
I got an email yesterday saying that they're ahead of schedule. So instead
Oh,
of getting it in November, I'm getting it in September now.
oh,
So I'm
nice.
only a couple
Okay,
weeks
good.
away.
I
So
get mine this month
this month.
In August. Yeah.
Yeah, I know our friend Emilio has one. You know, the strap he
Yeah.
put on it looks
Yeah.
great, and it's like a true avocado. The texture, look at those are
Yeah.
fun. You know, not
That's fun.
expensive. So I think that's where, you know, sometimes we get too lost in what's the next Grail watch. I think we
Yeah.
also got to take it back to what's the fun, you know, kind of watch you can pick up, just love, and think, you know, this is really unique or really cool, and almost feel like a kid again with a toy where, you know, you're not too worried about, you know, what's the value? Is it going to appreciate more of just this is awesome and let me have fun with this?
Yeah. And to your point, you know, like I bought Studio Underdog. They had a collab with Wrist Check, and I just liked it. It's the one I have is a fried egg,
Hmm.
and that one they'll never make again. It was a one-off collab, so I was happy. I think they made, I think maybe 180
Hmm.
pieces, 190 pieces. I could be wrong. Correct me. But I thought it was very cool, so I bought it. It was a, you know, you had to kind of be in line at like 10 o'clock in the morning to,
Right.
you know, kind of pull the trigger. And, you know, I'm in my car and I didn't want to miss. So I'm in the car, I'm driving, and at the same time, I'm like refreshing to try to, you know, be able to make the payment and get the, I was going to buy, you know, one of each color, which was three of them. I only got a chance
Hmm.
to buy one, which was the fried egg, which I love. I'm happy with it. But I just, that's kind of started me down that road of independence and how fun they can be, but also how beautiful they can
Yeah.
be. And so, you know, what I think about independence, they kind of have the freedom to be themselves. Whereas, you know, when you have shareholders or, you know, you have a huge board and, you know, you've got expectations, you know, it's very tough. And I liken them to like Rolex, where it's kind of turning an oil tanker in a canal, you know, it's very difficult. And, but with independence, they've got their own identity.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of times their brand is who they are, you know, their
Yeah.
own identity. And so, like for me, a brand that I, you know, started connecting with this year, I like independence. And, you know, I've got a few fun stuff. And for me, Anoma
Oh yeah.
and Mateo, shout out to Mateo from Anoma Watches. He's just done such an incredible job. And this watch was never, you know, on my radar or anything. But, you know, I follow some really insane collectors. I mean, guys that have got, you know, 2, 3 thousand watches, you know, which is, it's just too much. But, you know, like they'll pair their watch with a cufflinks, you know, same
Right.
type, and you know they buy a watch and they buy a set of cufflinks, which I think is very cool, but very expensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's something that you have to be careful about. So as I'm scrolling, I'm looking at some of the collection, and I see this watch, and let me open it here, and I don't know why, but it kind of stuck out. um, I hadn't seen a watch like this. I know Rado had made one, and I think Hamilton made one for
Yeah, the Ventura,
Elvis.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
very ahead of its time. I mean, now it looks futuristic and modern. This guy was wearing it decades ago,
yeah, it
so
was
that's what I
60
thought of.
years ago,
Yeah,
you know. So when I saw it, I said, this guy's got every watch. He's got every, you know, he's got grail pieces. He's got one of ones, piece unique, like everything. And he's wearing this. And so I wrote to him. You know, we've had conversations in the past, and he's a very approachable guy. I'm not going to say his name out here because I don't want people reaching out to him and bothering him. But he's a big collector, very, very approachable. And, you know, I asked him, I'm like, hey, what is that? I didn't know anything about it. And he says, this is a new independent. Buy this watch. And I thought, that's weird because, you know, usually they'll say, look, buy what you like. If it's, you know, something that speaks to you, fine. But he didn't say any of that. He just said, buy this watch. And I think more than anything, not only did he like the way it looked, but I think he wanted to support an indie, you know, an independent brand. And I thought, okay. So I reached out to the watchmaker and I said, hey, look, it's kind of shot in the dark, because, they're probably, you know, 400 people a day are probably
Right.
reaching out. And, so you kind of hope your message gets through. And a lot of times it doesn't. Like, how many times have you reached out to people and, nobody's, they don't write back, or,
Right.
you feel like, oh, well, this person, I know they read the message, but they just don't feel like writing back. He was very, very cool about, writing back. Hey, thank you, for writing
Mm-hmm.
me. I'm glad you enjoy the brand, blah, blah, blah. So we had a few more conversations. I think he wanted to, kind of see where I was
Mm-hmm.
and, how I felt about the watch, but the industry as a whole. And I think he liked the fact that we were part of the MIA Watch Club. And, he sent me a link and said, hey, look, I'm going to release it. There's only 300 pieces that we're making of this particular one. I'm going to give you first dibs at it. And so he sent me the link. I paid for it. And I was the first person in Miami to get that watch just because I think I reached out to him early enough and said, I really like what you're doing. I really want to own the piece. I don't want to buy it and flip it or do anything
Right.
of that. And I think that's important for independent, watchmakers. They're business owners. Like, they're
Right.
pouring their heart and soul into this stuff. They're artisans, and this is not just a business for them. It's not just something that they're doing to get an exit out of it and open something else. This is their life. And so I thought, how great is it to support people who are, kind of pouring their whole life into
Right.
these watches. You don't know what their backstories are. You don't know if they, maybe come from wealth and this is just another business, or like they're putting every penny in their savings into this business and hoping that they can affect people and
Right.
hoping that they're putting out a product that people will identify with. And
Yeah.
I think for independents, like for people like us that we're part of MIA Watch Club and we're part of the watch club community, it's important for us to support independents. Now obviously you don't have to support every single one,
Right.
and you have to make sure that you kind of don't go broke while supporting
Yeah.
independents and buying watches, which is kind of hard to do because you always, every time we see a new watch we want to buy it.
Right.
But I think if you look at what they're doing, if the design language speaks to you and you feel like this is something that's going to stick around and this is something where he's an artist, not just a watchmaker, I think you definitely have to support.
Yeah.
And so, that's for me, I think it's important. And, I kind of want to get into the case that you brought your watches in.
Oh yeah.
Because I know, shout out to Blake, but I want you to kind of talk about that watch case and, we're kind of going into this independence tangent, and I want you to talk about it.
Yeah. So I met Blake Simon through Miami Watch Club. He was a friend of Mikey's.
Yeah.
So went to lunch with him one day, learned that he was doing this Krug designs. So he makes not just watch rolls, but other leather goods, so backpacks, things like that. Makes everything, from scratch. And I like this one because, again, I mentioned earlier, I'm big on the blues. So I saw what he was doing, and I thought, I want to support him, right? Support, whether it's a local business or
Right.
an independent watchmaker, whatever it is. I thought this was beautiful. And I reached out in the past, to other brands that make these, and they're not willing to be flexible, customize things for you. Blake's all about that. And one example I'll give you is most watch pillows that you get come in a pretty standard size, and I think
Yeah.
they're too big, so I'm afraid of stretching out my bracelets, or
Yeah.
especially on leather, too much fraying, or if it's too small, then it's like too tight on the leather and the clasp. I told him what size I wanted, and he got those custom made for me. So,
Wow.
so not only did I choose, this is one of the options there for the exterior, but the interior, I told him
It's
I
like
wanted.
a houndstooth, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's like teal, navy, and a
Mhm.
very dark blue, or more like an indigo. And then I wanted navy on the interior. And then, of course, I asked for the smaller pillows. So, got that made. So, love the output here. I know he's working on a collab for our club, but I do love this. So, I mean, like I said, I've bought some of these for some higher end makers. I found some on Amazon, but you always have that frustration where, it's not really too customized. So you end up with these large pillows, or maybe the quality isn't the greatest. I thought this, really checked all the boxes. So really happy with this. Again, shout out to Krug or Blake Simon. So
Yeah.
ecstatic with this.
Yeah, and this is what we're talking about, like with independence. Yes, you can buy a cheaper watch roll, of course. Amazon sells them for like $20.
Right.
And I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
I've bought the cheap ones, and if I'm traveling and I don't want to take my, nicer watches. I grab the Amazon watch roll, throw some watches in there and take off. But how nice is it when you can see the person that is making the watch roll for you? You can talk to the person, you can customize it.
Right.
It's worth it to pay a little extra for that.
Yeah.
And, like he's part of the watch community, he's part of the watch club. I like to see that. I like to support, people in our community and, help people that are doing really good work. I mean, this is amazing. This is custom pretty much. I mean, it's for you, but at the same time, you're not paying a custom price really, where it could be double this or three times this. I think that's pretty reasonable for what you get.
And what I love that you said earlier about Mateo is that, he seems accessible, approachable. You're able to email with him, have a conversation. That's how I felt with Blake. So again, sometimes you get lost where you shoot an email to a watchmaker, to a brand, you might get a canned response, just thanks for your inquiry. We'll get back to you if something changes or as that option becomes available. Whereas, with Mateo or with Blake, you have that accessibility where I was able to get lunch with them. I see him pretty regularly now. Awesome. So, it's just someone who's part of the community and cares about the community.
Good, man. So, as we wrap up here, Watches and Wisdom, we like to, like I said, it's not about the watches, it's about the people and, kind of where, what kind of impact you're making. So, what's one thing that you'd like people to know about you that you think is something about you that blesses other people, that helps other people? Like, give me just one thing about you that you feel like it's impactful.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. As you saw, I'm pretty involved. So one thing I've always felt like is that I've always done a good job of balancing my work, my personal, but always giving back to the community. So, I'm happy to help anybody with whatever they need. I've had, like I mentioned, other businesses in the past where I was a coach, a consultant, a mentor. So I'm always willing to take someone under my wing, whether it's in the watch community, whether it's in the business community. I'm part of the Chile U.S. Chamber of Commerce, so that's usually, small businesses that are either coming from Chile or want to do something with Chile. So we help guide them. So, I'm again, talking about approachable, accessible. I'm happy to talk to anybody about, whether it's something they're struggling with, whether it's the watch journey. I'm just a very open person. Okay. So if anybody ever, needs anything, my door's wide open always. So
good. And you're single?
I'm single.
All right. He's young. So, really, I'd like to, really talk about gratitude. And we've had this conversation now and talking about your brother and some of the work that you do. And it's really kind of been on my heart. And it's been something that I really wanted to, and anybody that I talk to, I'm like, man, just be grateful. It can be so much worse. Yeah, man, just gratitude for me. Yeah. Like I really want, people around me to feel that I'm grateful just to be there.
Right.
Like I'm happy to be in a room. I'm happy to be in a room with very important people. And at the same time, I'm happy to be in a room with people who, by their own, standard or by society's standard, don't put very much value on it. And so that, it refreshed me to be part of that, the Wow Center, the casino night, because, it kind of reminds you, hey, you should be helping and being around people who have nothing physically to offer you.
Right.
Because, what good is it if you only help the people that can help you back? It's no good at all. Then it's, you're just trying to get something for something else that you do. The real measure of that is how do you help people who can't do anything for you, who have
Right.
no financial, means to help you, or have no physical means to help you, or, really on an intellectual basis,
Right.
you can't, have that kind of discourse. Well, by the end of the night, I left so refreshed and so happy, after that final, 2:30 in the morning
Yeah.
conversation with your brother. I left happy. And so it I think if we can be grateful and just realize all the good things that God has
Right.
given us, you kind of forget about some of the struggles that you're dealing with, and some of the,
Yeah.
other stuff that is happening in society, and you're not worried too much about politics, or you're not,
Right.
worried about, the geopolitical, situations, and, war upcoming, because, you're happy that you are where you are, and that God has put you where He has. So
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I always think about that, how there's always something going on in the world. There always has been. I believe that's not the case, but when you got, the local community you see, especially the one I'm involved with, the special needs,
yeah,
the there you said the word joy earlier, right?
yeah,
The joy they have, that wholesome innocence. When you're part of that, it really recharges you,
yeah,
and it really makes you forget what's going on. So that's something I'm blessed to be a part of, not just in my everyday with my brother, but also being part of this community, being part of the Wow Center, being part of the board.
yeah.
So it's just something that's made, I think, a huge difference in my life. Going back to mental health, that's something that just grounds me, brings me back to what's important. So definitely, I'm blessed and happy and thankful that I can you know give back to them in any way I can. So it's definitely a true blessing.
Amazing, man. Well, such a great time. I love hanging with you, but
Yeah,
this is kind of intense.
yeah.
So I loved it even more. But thanks, man.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate the time.